Welcome everyone to Detectify's Hacker School Part 3. I think I've seen some of you here on the previous two as well, but for those of you who are new, welcome, and the old ones, of course, welcome as well. So this is something we do on a quarterly basis where we invite customers, prospects, and other people that might be interested in learning more about security. We've been having some different focus throughout the past presentations we've had, inviting some of our other customers to tell about how they are using Detectify and working with security in general. Today, we will be focusing on some different things. I will do a short introduction where you can bring or get drinks and get snacks, and also 2 restrooms next to the elevator. We will be having the talks until approximately 5:30. So if you want to sneak away to go to the restroom, that's totally fine. Then we'll have Johan Norman over there. He will talk about his key takeaways from the Black Hat Security Conference. We have Frederick, who will say how a hacker interprets the DEF CON conference. And then we have a guest here, Pipedrive. Both Christian and Jesse will tell you about their take on security, how they're using Detectify, and what they've learned throughout their growth stage in their company. And lastly, we will talk about some product updates and what we will be working on the upcoming quarters. So, Johan Norman, welcome up here.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I guess I can stand here, right? I've seen quite a few of you before, but for those who doesn't know me, my name is Johan. We make it quite easy for ourselves at Detectify. Everyone is called Johan. I'm the CIO of Detectify, which means that I'm more or less responsible for everything that comes out from what we call product and technology. I'm gonna need some water. And I can tell you about Black Hat. So, Black Hat is one of the biggest security conferences in the world. It's held in Las Vegas in the USA, and it's also held in London and in Singapore. Last year, Black Hat had its 20 years anniversary. There were more than 70,000 visitors last year. This year it grew even bigger. This year there were more than 90,000 visitors, which is a really, really big event. It's held for 5 days. The first 3 days is usually around security training and briefings and that kind of information, while the last 2 days is more of an expo. A lot of focus on vendors and different kind of approaches on security, compared to DEF CON, which Frederick will talk about a little bit later. So, we attended Black Hat this year, and these are some of the key takeaways that we had from that event. Number 1, there is a big talk about offensive versus defensive security. You might have heard terms like red team and blue team. You talk about, okay, should we work with security from an attacker's perspective, black boxing, trying to do pen tests, or should we work on a more reactive state, doing fixing, patching, etc. When you visit Black Hat and look at the companies and look at how companies like to approach it, you can see that a lot of companies want to be in the offensive sector. It's way cooler to be the company that breaks into other companies than actually be the company that provide security, education, help with fixes, and that kind of things. However, a key thing is that Gartner actually delivered a report just before Black Hat saying that about $90 billion is going to be spent on defensive security this year. So even though a lot of the companies actually want to be in the offensive sector, there is still a lot of money to actually make from defensive security. Another key thing, Risto, who is the CEO of F-Secure and an early investor in Detectify, did an interview with Detectify earlier this year when he talked about the AI and the machine learning aspect of security. And he mentioned that this is something that's really, really interesting and it really can spur your imagination of what you can do. And this is something that we really saw a lot at Black Hat also. A lot of the threat intelligence, systems were relying on machine learning, trying to figure out where they can, how they can get in, and where they can get in. On the other hand, what we often heard when you walked around and listened to these companies and listened to other persons being there talking to them, was that, well, but I know how my environment is set up. I know where I have my attack vectors. How can you, as an AI system or a machine learning system, actually figure that one out? And a lot of the companies didn't really have any concrete answers, or have any concrete examples on how they would do it. So I think that machine learning and AI is still a big buzz out there, and I think there's still a lot of things that we'll see in the future, but I think we need to actually be a bit hesitant on how it actually can help us and what we actually can do with it. Number 3, the amount of endpoints are growing. A few years ago, we used to talk about clients and servers. Today we talk about clients and servers, but we also talk about on-prem solutions. We talk about cloud solutions. We talk about IoT devices and cell phones. The amount of endpoints are continuously growing, which means that there are more attack vectors that we need to take into consideration. And we see that there is not one solution that can help you with all of these things. One thing that we saw quite a lot at Black Hat was the security vendors that have niched themselves into IoT devices. Because a lot of the IoT devices that are out there today are not built with security in mind. And we see that a lot of companies are installing IoT devices at their offices. There are smart TVs in meeting rooms that no one knows how to patch and how to keep up to date. We also know that everyone have a cell phone in their pocket right now, right? And these are most likely unencrypted, containing company information that should be classified and should not actually leave the perimeter of the company. So the amount of endpoints are growing, and we need to find, there is not one solution that fits all of this, but we need to find ways to actually protect us on all these endpoints that we have. Talking about solutions, there is not one solution. This was also a big thing that we saw and a big thing that was discussed. We see companies using pen testers. We see companies using different kind of bug bounty programs. We see companies using automated testing like Detectify. What we see is that a lot of these companies are trying to provide a security product or an aspect that can solve all of this. However, when we start to dig into it, what we really see is that the information that these different kind of services can provide is really, really important when it ends up in the right hands at the right time. We talk a lot about what's called shifting left, which means that security shouldn't be the end of your product or the end of the project that you do. Security needs to be in the development process or in the DevOps process, which means that if you are doing development and if you have a development cycle, it's really important that you actually have the testing where it should be. And as Parisa Tabriz from Google said in her introduction speech, it's really important to make champions outside the security sector. Because everyone is in the security sector, we know about the security aspect, we know what we should do. But the developers are actually the ones that continuously develop stuff and put code into production. And those are the ones that actually needs to know what kind of potential security breaches that we might have in the development cycle. So we need to be educational and we need to learn these developers on how to write more secure code. Good things that Parisa talked about is capture the flag events or hacking events, where you actually get down and you have specific projects that you should focus on and actually try to break into. So, of course, in an event like this, it's always nice to sneak around and look into what are our competitors doing and how is actually the market looking for automated testing tools like Detectify. I think a really interesting aspect of this was that a lot of the companies that we were pitched from investors, clients, other people in the security aspect, when you go and talk to them and you listen to what they are doing, they are not really competitors to Detectify. So the security aspect of where we are as a web application scanner is has really broadened over the last couple of years. There are a niche player even in this niche area, so to say. One thing though, or two things though, that a lot of companies were talking about was the false positive ratio. Zero false positive is a buzzword that everyone is using. We can provide zero false positives in your reports. I would say that all companies have different approaches on how to do this. Some companies provide manual reviews on all the reports that they provide. Other companies like Detectify, like we do, we have new low noise profiles, where we actually can provide you with, okay, so these are tests that we know won't generate any false positives. The second takeaway, or the second thing that we saw quite a lot of, was that a lot of companies are also focusing on only generic developer bugs. And this is something that is quite hard from a Detectify perspective. As all of you know, we have the Detectify crowdsource platform, which actually is a platform where we get in product-specific vulnerabilities that we automate and build into our tool. And this is something when I went around and talked to different companies, they were focused so much on the generic issues that might appear. And so I find it quite odd that there were not more of a focus on actually product-developed vulnerabilities. And of course, a bonus. There needs to be a bonus, right? No one is safe. Signing up for Black Hat to get one of these badges. These badges have a small card. So when you walk around and visit a different vendor booth, they can scan them. So to get your information, who you are, your contact information, so they can send out amazing marketing material once you leave the Black Hat event. We're a guy who realized that this card, of course, has an NFC chip in it. And that NFC chip could be read by an application, NFC reader. So I started to dig into this. And the app for it actually was listening to an API. That API was not encrypted. It has IDORs on the user IDs. And all the information, it was just able to, it had no request limit on the amount of requests you could send to the API. So I guess my information is out there somewhere, together with all the other 19,000 visiting Black Hat. Thank you.
So yeah, you mentioned that other application scanners are focusing on generic vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Why? I would say, I think most of the easy things are the OWASP. You can follow like the OWASP list and those kind of common generic vulnerabilities. Adding product-specific vulnerabilities needs to have another approach to it. I really think what we're doing with the cross-security community is unique. And there were, of course, we have the bug bounty programs like HackerOne and Crowdsource and Synac and all these kind of companies that get in those kind of information, but automate them and build them into the tool. There's really no other tool that's doing that today.
But do you think it's because of demand from people that want web scanning that they only care about the OWASP, or why are they focusing on it?
I think it's because how we always have done. We have always focused on SQL injections. You heard me say this like 100 times. I started in the IT industry back in '96 as a developer myself. I know that we were talking about SQL injections back then. People still haven't learned. It's still the most common vulnerability when we look at the OWASP top 10 list. So we're still doing the same mistakes, I don't know, 20 years later. So I think it's quite easy for the security company to say, okay, so this is top list. These are things that we know that people when they're doing mistakes. So we need to focus on these and need to provide support for these ones.
Any other questions? Cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so going from corporate to hackers, in double meaning. So, Frederick is going to talk about DEFCON.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I recognize a lot of faces. Some are new though. So, for those of you who don't know, my name is Frederick Helmert. I'm a co-founder and security researcher here at Detectify. So what I do is I automate vulnerabilities and I fiddle around in technologies and I do a lot of bug bounties. So DEFCON. DEFCON happens just after Black Hat in the USA. And it's more of a hacker-friendly conference. And it's so big, so it's more or less like a festival. There's a lot of villages where people spend their time on hacking different things. One of the things that I found very interesting was the voting machine village. This was a big thing just after the US election, 2016. So last year, basically, 2017. This was introduced into DEFCON. Turned out that 43 different states had voting machines that are over 10 years old. And, well, you can imagine they are not properly patched. You can't really get them as a private citizen, but these are hackers, it's 20,000 of them, so they managed to get a bunch of these devices. So this was a big thing last year, right?
You define a voting machine, some kind of server, or just what's a voting machine?
A voting machine, when you go to an election, well, it's like a little device, you know, where you
put a mechanical device.
Yeah, like a computer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, okay. So it can be hacked.
Of course it
Oh,
can.
of course.
So this year, everything broke. I don't know how many vendors they got in, like 15, 20 vendors. And all of them got owned during this conference. Some were done within like seconds and others took a couple of hours. And some were even remotely exploitable over Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And this is pretty bad stuff, right? So yeah, one of the voting machines that they got into the conference even had voting results from US citizens, like 600,000 of them, in one of these devices. That was not wiped before the conference. It's crazy stuff. So, that's something to think about before, you know. Yes, soon is the Swedish election. Good thing we don't have those. Just as a demonstration, I have a video.
I'm very concerned for our upcoming election because this voting machine is used in 18 different states, and it's extremely easy to get admin access on this machine. So let me show you how quick it is. It's in 18 different states, and it's
So actually, one of these voting machines being severely hacked could have voted one of them.
Yep.
There we go. VOC always to the rest.
concerned for our upcoming election because this voting machine is used in 18 different states, and it's extremely easy to get admin access on this machine. So let me show you how quick it is. About a little under 2 minutes. All they have to do, this bad actor, would be to open up this machine by pressing this button right here. When it's off, removing the card reader, removing this, you don't need any tools to do this. Unplugging this, again, you don't need any tools to do this. Turning it on, all you have to do is pick this lock here with a ballpoint pen. Press the red button. And we're gonna let it boot up here. And then I'll show you the admin access. So it's it's loading what they call a secure voting terminal right now. And here we're going to see a couple of error messages, and all you have to do to bypass those error messages is just click cancel and OK. And now I have full admin access under 2 minutes.
So who really won the election?
Who knows, right?
Does this mean Trump will be president forever?
I don't know. But it's some serious stuff.
As long as it's got a ballpoint pen.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight this because I thought this was kind of bad.
That's nightmarish.
Yeah, right? This screws up democracies. Potentially. Who knows? So another thing that was spoken about a lot is the research called Practical Web Cache Poisoning. It was released by James Cadell at Portsmouth. And traditionally when you speak about cache poisoning attacks, it's been in the client, like in your browser. That catches something and you can use that to conduct some cross-site scripting attacks and so forth. But this research is it's new because it affects middle layers that caches responses. So some of the technologies that was explored in this talk was Cloudflare and Akamai, for example. How to use those to cache things from a malicious actor and serve it to many users. So usually these things work like this. A user goes to a website, right? It passes through a caching layer. If this layer doesn't know the response already, goes to the website generates some content, it's cached, and then served to the user. Every other subsequent user will go to the cache layer and get the same response. Simple as that, right? What's interesting is if an attacker knows how the caching mechanism works, and the attacker somehow can have content reflected back, then it will get stored in the cache. So then you can send a link to another user and it will be served from the cache instead. And the application wouldn't really know because we'll never see the request. So the attack basically works like this. This is a normal HTTP request. The colors are a bit bigger, but the relative part of the URL in the very top and the host header, those are used as a caching key. That's what it's called. That's what the caching layer is looking for. So every request coming from whatever visitor it will take those, check some of them, and then try to send back some response. But in Send Framework was one of the examples that was brought up. They listen to an X-forwarded host header on top of the normal host header, which means the application would see one header, the caching layer would see something else. So exploiting this then, me as an attacker, for example, would set an X-forwarded host header to my domain. If it was reflected somewhere on the website, then my header would be served instead of the original example.com. And I could then send the same link to other users and it would serve the same content, meaning persistent XSS, or until the cache expires. I thought this was cool stuff. We have this now in Detectify. So I was on the HackerOne's live hacking event, and I find it very interesting to speak with other people hacking. You can learn a lot from them. So we were competing as Team Sweden during this event. So a friend of mine, Matthias, he found this web application. It was for a very big CRM system. Let's put it like that way. And when you got to this website, you were prompted like, okay, you must be a super admin on this organization, right? You can't do anything, and there was some funky OAuth things going on, so you couldn't really do much. But looking through the JavaScript, we found this URL /admin/API/license. You try to access directly, you get like 403 forbidden, can't do anything. And that's usually, historically, when I've been looking, I just giving up, like, okay, I can't really do anything. I would go on the authentication and try to screw that up. But Matthias here, he was clever. He was like, what if the authentication layer is another layer other than the actual application? Because that's how you do things, right? So what he did was he changed one byte up here from a lowercase I to an uppercase I, and all of a sudden you got full access to the admin API of this company. And I thought, this is very silly. To say the least. It's one byte and you own everything. So these two I implemented into Detectify. So what I want to say is, conferences are fun. I'm usually there to mostly talk with people rather than the presentation themselves, because you will always hear about the presentations. And well, yeah, that's about it, I suppose. Thank you.
So at these conferences, is it usually a lot of people that has like saved up on research that are being released during these events, or how can you tell me about like?
Yeah, so I actually met James Cadell with the practical web cache hosting back in May, and he mentioned something about this, like it was very cryptic because he was going to publish it at this point. So yeah, that happens all the time. People find vulnerabilities over a year, then release it over, like during Black Hat and DEFCON and so forth. That's usually how it goes.
Do you know why people do like that?
It's a lot of attention, a lot of media, press coverage, everyone at the same place, I suppose.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Are you sitting and then reporting back, and then you have the back-end team like?
Yeah, it was like that. It's been hectic. It's been a hectic couple of weeks since I got back.
Just an additional comment, the talk that you mentioned is actually up on YouTube. It's one of the few from Black Hat, so if people are more interested in knowing more, it's in there and for this.
Cool, thanks. No other questions? Thank you, Perfect. All right. So now we have Christian from Pipedrive that's gonna tell us about what they are doing and what he is doing. I'm not gonna share it, I'm gonna present it. There you go.
Hello everyone, I'm Christian. I am from Pipedrive. We are a sales CRM, but not, that was not our so I work as a cybersecurity specialist there, and I will take you on a, well, evolution usually takes a long time, but if you're a part of a startup, the evolution time is quite fast. But I'll go through different stages that our program went through, and it is still going. So, Pipedrive is 7 years old, but our information security program is actually 2.5 years old. That doesn't mean that Pipedrive didn't do security before that. Rather, everybody does security, but it wasn't done in an organized manner. So our program has three quite, not say simple, but three goals. Teach our own employees how to protect customer information, because we held their information and they keep their sales information there, so it's quite important that we keep that secure. We want to lower the risk to business and build trust with our customers. So with our customers, we usually do that with through compliance, and I will explain that in a bit. So when we first started, we had to baseline everything. We had to understand the state of security, what was there, what was missing, and what needs to be improved upon. So we used I do believe this, the framework itself was produced by British government. It's called Cyber Essentials. A company can also get certified with Cyber Essentials, but we did not want to do that. We rather wanted to understand what was the state that we are in, because it's quite an easy framework to follow, and it included something that we are interested in, like endpoint monitoring, malware monitoring, user education, which is often not spoken as much as it should be, because in the end, you cannot be the security department, do security alone. You have to do it with your company. You have to teach that culture. Our work at that time was ad hoc and mostly manual because we had quite a depth to work. Since the company was older than us, we had to work on our way up and at the same time keep up with the agile company we are. So we used 3 tools in the beginning. Detectify, I think some people have heard about that. Why did we use that? We wanted to understand baseline where our web application is at. Since we are a SaaS application, we need to know what vulnerabilities we have there. That was a great tool to start with. To understand our backend, our server situation, we use Nessus or Security Center. Also a vulnerability scanner, but from a different perspective. Also producible material for us to see, all right, this is what we need to give the developers, and this is what we need to give our operations team. And of course, HackerOne, since we are a company that deploys, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 times a day. So you cannot do yearly pen tests and hope that you're secure. You have to keep a continuous security, and that's why these 3 tools really complement each other. So the Cyber Essentials and all this laid a quite good foundation for our security program. And this is where we entered my favorite area, the era of spreadsheets. So when a security conscious company wants to use a tool, they usually send out a security questionnaire to understand the state of security and if they can trust their data with that company. So those questionnaires are usually 2 to 3 sheets long, all kinds of questions. They often are similar, but they don't overlap. We hear many questions from customer support asking if we have any security certifications like SOC or ISO, etc. So we started researching upon that. How can we make our lives easier on that end? We found a tool that was produced by Google, which is vendor security questionnaire, essentially. So Google VSAQ, it covered 4 different aspects of security, like infrastructure, web application, network security, etc. It's essentially a questionnaire that we filled out. We do it a couple of times a year to make sure that the things are up to date, but this is the thing that customer support can share it with customers immediately. Customer comes to us, hey, are you doing these things? Can you fill out this questionnaire? We say, hey, we have done this, take a look at that, if that's suffice for you. And that's what we started to ask from our customers, but our vendors that we wanted to use. So if a vendor didn't have any security certification or any security white papers, but we wanted to use them, we sent out that VSAQ, they filled it up, our team goes through it, sees, okay, they're okay to use, no, or they need to be assessed like in a half year again. So, and during the spreadsheet era, we understood that we also need to start working on a compliance certification. We chose SOC 2, which is based on 5 trust principles: security, processing, integrity, confidentiality, availability, and privacy. So why did we choose that? It was one of the most asked about certification, and it fit our customer base, since we have a lot of customers in the United States as well. We accomplished that. That answered a lot of questions for our customers. We were able to move on faster. But with the security certification, your company becomes at a stage where you have to implement certain policies and procedures. This raised quite a big clamor in our company, which I will talk about in a bit. And we identified that we cannot work on different spreadsheets, documents. We need a proper GRC system, which is a governance, risk, and compliance system to store everything in one place to make our lives easier. And at the same time, we were able to streamline our 3 tools that we were using, and we implemented a new tool called Agent, because now that we had the baseline, we understood what's going on with our application. We wanted to understand what's going on in our networks 24/7. So that's what Agent gave us, the visibility into our networks and devices. So policies. I like to bring this up. When we do our job applications, one of the points there saying no corporate bullshit. So when Jesse implemented our first policy and spoke about it in our company update meeting, everyone was like, what? You said no corporate bullshit. What's going on? What? And we tried to first say, hey, we don't want to make this a corporate, it's rather a guideline how we want to behave. Since our customers are asking us how we behave, we have to show it as a security certification. We just show that we behave in a certain way. It's different sets of not rules but rather guidelines. When we travel, like we came here from Estonia, Thailand today, we have our travel policy. We know how to protect our laptops while we're away, what to do, how to get reimbursed when we get back, etc. It's just a guideline. We review those yearly. We have a system set up to notice us to go over it. We always take feedback from our employees to go over it, understand maybe something is just not fitting for our company or it doesn't really make sense. And of course, the main question was, what if I don't comply with the policy? Will I get fired? No, we don't intend to fire you. We just will determine whether you didn't agree with the policy because of an accident or knowingly violated the policy. In that end, we either adjust the policy if it doesn't make sense for us. If you knowingly violated to get your job done, but policy said something else, we just adjust the policy. Or if you unknowingly did that, we will train you to the policy. It's important to train the employees. All right, streamlining. And it's still 2.5 years, so I can't be on at the third stage already. But we got a GRC system called Aromba. This enabled us to add all of our data into one place. We had our security incidents that were happening in there, our compliance items, our security services attached to it. What is a security service? Essentially, all of our actions became security services, like Detectify. We had to make sure that we have the tool, we use the tool, and we have a person who audits that we actually use the tool properly. We also got SOC 2 Type 2, which is essentially 6 months had passed from the spreadsheet era of Type 1. We showed the auditors what we promised we were actually doing. So that's good. Yeah, so let's go into security services. Let's take Detectify, a good example. So we run our scans weekly. But in the beginning, you always don't have time to, all right, let's scan this on Monday, on Tuesday, I'll go over it, try to reproduce, get the system done, get it to developers all done. In reality, you may not have time. So our security service for Detectify meant that at least once a month, all the bugs that have been found by Detectify are checked over, made sure if they are reproducible, they are assigned to a proper engineering team, and they're getting fixed, so you track that. So that's, for example, what I did. I handled the maintenance part of the service. I went over the bugs, checked that, gave it in, leave a trace of record into our GRC system, and then Jesse, our information security manager, was able to go in there, take a look, okay, everything's done, it's audited, it's done. And why is it good? Now that we had our auditors here 2 weeks ago, they went over it, checked, okay, these actions are done. We just produced the paper really easily. We didn't have to go through lengths of trouble to show them that we are actually doing those things that we promise. And security incidents. So we started to see a large influx of incidents in our company. Should we panic? Not really. It's just we had approached the time where we actually had a security conscious culture and people were noticing irregularities in the company. They started coming to us. You have to grade it as a not as a hostile environment that people don't want to bring you these incidents even if they may have caused it. It's alright. We'll take a look, we'll take care of it. Of course there was a lot of false positives, but it was a good step. We understood that what we were doing had actually some effect. And over time, the quality improves a lot. automation. So I would say that's where we are at now. At the beginning, you had to do many things, manual, ad hoc. You couldn't really think about how can I make my life easier so I don't have to do those trivial tasks every time. You just didn't, because you had to go take a look at the next thing. But now we have time. Of course, our team has gotten a lot bigger. We have the manpower to do that. So we have started automating trivial tasks of even like the most example thing that comes to my mind right now is HackerOne. In the beginning, it didn't have even a Jira integration. You had to go in there. Okay, it's reproducible. I go into Jira, I grade the description, I recreate the ticket in there, and then I assign it to a team. Now I have just one click button, done, and I can move on. It's a really simple thing, and might not be like hours of work, but it all sums up in the end. Yeah, we also have included more tools like OSEC, which is a host intrusion detection system, which runs on a server or an endpoint and detects the attacks specifically on that endpoint. And SNCC, which is a code dependency scanner. So, if you're an application, you often include code written from other developers, and especially in the Node NPM market, you can publish your own snippets quite easily. So it's important for us to scan those dependencies if we use them and detect the vulnerabilities in there. I think I rushed through everything so fast. Thank you.
So I actually have a question regarding you talking about going into the company. You had some legacy, 100 people working there. How did you get people, especially developers, to actually care about security? Maybe they did before to a certain extent, but you coming in as a security person, how was that process?
That was actually interesting, yeah, because at the beginning, we really had to go out to the developers saying, hey, check this out, what's there, It wasn't really they coming to us saying, hey, we have this feature ready to release, can you have your tools to check that out? It happened over time. Training was really a big part of it. Going actually talk to developers face to face, making them understand that, hey, we are not intended to make your jobs harder or add extra layers of work in there. We try to be visible but not intrusive at the same time. And over time that culture changed, so we have that the other way around now, luckily.
Nice. Any other questions?
Yes.
Do you use it for static code analysis?
Yes, we also have a Sonar Cube that is being used every year. So basically, through the pipeline that goes pushed, then Sonar Cube scans that through as well.
Other questions?
Do you do follow-ups with the teams about the security awareness stuff, or like every month, or it's just like one time and then you expect them to come back and to you and?
No, so we if we talk about bugs specifically, what we do is we give the bugs to the teams to fix, assist them if they don't understand why do we even need to fix this, or why is this a problem, and afterwards they fix it, we test it again to make sure that it's actually fixed. We don't want to, for example, in HackerOne, pay out twice the money for the same bug. And the training is really the key that we do regularly with each of the team. We try to sort of, it's cyber sieges that we do with the teams. So essentially, the teams come together and they have to defend their own systems. And while the red teaming part attacks their systems live at the time. So it's those little events and trainings that we try to do with them. I think Jesse will talk about security by design a bit more in depth, but whenever our team releases a new feature, they follow security by design, privacy by design with our team. Security by design is based on OWASP, secure coding checklist. And so yeah, we try to be incorporated, but not intrusive.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Christian. right, next up we have Jesse, also from Pipedrive. Gonna talk about security efficiency.
Okay, this is Justin Koviak. I'm American, ended up in Estonia somehow. And when I was there, I ended up going to Talent Technical University for cybersecurity. Yeah, that's where Chris and I crossed paths. I finished up school, was getting ready to leave, and Pipedrive calls me up and says, come in, let's talk. I did this, and ended up being the first security manager. So I jumped in, and there was 100 people in the company at that time. By the way, my focus is normally for startups. Just so I can know my audience, how many here are a part of startups?
Kinda.
Actually, so more institutional type of organization. More than 100 people? Okay, cool. And how many people are actually hackers? How many people are business people? That's it. That'll help. So this is where I began at. A company was 5 years old. We had 100 employees and 30,000 customers. So when I went in, the first thing I understood was that customers are the things I was trying to protect, and the employees. Physical assets were not so important, so I scoped it out. Today, 7 years on, well, it was 2 years for me, 2.5 years. The company's 7 years old. More than 20 employees, it keeps growing. We have physical assets growing because I actually increase the scope for the locations. And also our customer base keeps growing. And this is customers end up being companies, not users, but users are, I don't keep track, but over 200,000. So one of the first things I realized was that I was in over my head. The company was 5 years old. Not that they hadn't done security, but they hadn't done it in a organized manner. And so different people knew different things. Information sharing wasn't done in a convincing or structured way. Coming from the Navy, actually one of the things that the U.S. military does well is we train well, if you can believe it. So if you have idle hands, you start training. And so this is something that that I brought with me. And so that was the cornerstone of the program when I started. But I understood that whatever I did, whatever step I took, I was going to be spinning my wheels if I was doing it myself. So I tried to create an efficiency every step of the way. Quite many of those. The biggest time saver in the beginning was actually Detectify. But then, so that saved time. Then I had to save my attention. And so at this point, Detectify is coming in, I'm using it, and I'm explaining these things to the developers. Over time in training, because I took the time, I slowed down and understood if I invested in them and went through all these bugs with them, that in time they were going to get bothered by me and just take care of themselves and learn it themselves, or they were actually going to learn how to read the report. They've actually gotten to the point now where I don't have to take every report to the developers. I can just give them the reports, they know how to read themselves, and they do the investigative work required to fix it. So that was a huge step, and it took time and attention away from what I was doing. I can refocus on other areas. And effort, of course. Checking every bug is difficult, and I'll go into another one where I really compliments here in a second. So, as everyone here knows about information security management systems, Chris just talked about it. The reason why is to get organized. After you get organized, you want to kind of be able to speak to people about it. So you know what you're talking about because you're doing it. Now you want to be able to make sure other people know what you're talking about. So you need to talk to business, understand what the business is. After you can talk to business, risk, that's basically the language of business. If you're going to talk to a finance guy, the easiest way to talk to him is through risk. It allows you to have things in a structured manner so you can they can at least understand how you're thinking, even if they don't understand every word that comes out of your mouth. And then you want to define the scope because you don't want to protect everything or you'll be inefficient. So the basics, and even today the basics are always the hard ones. Christian talked about Cyber Essentials. This is where we started at. I thought it was a very good program put out by the English government. And if you do this, if you do these things well, Like you have 50% of any framework could be. Like it's going to be easy. It's mostly documentation after that. You can choose SOC, you can choose ISO, you can choose NIST. If you're doing this well, you're already speaking to the things that they're worried about, and you can accelerate. And bug bounties. So when I got to the organization, they already had a bug bounty program in place through HackerOne. Usually bug bounties are for more mature organizations, so I was actually surprised to see this. And we jumped right in, and we were paying a lot of money. And so the biggest cost though was actually this HackerOne is a great relationship management tool. I get to contact or have contact with these hackers from all over the world. It's unbelievable. You can't do that through sales. Your salespeople will go nuts. You can't hold a conversation. It's painful for them. So you can actually put them into, here, go to HackerOne, we invite them in, they become part of our program, and it's a great tool for managing that relationship. But those relationships are noisy. And this goes back to efficiency again, where you're actually talking to so many people, and it's not always a conversation you want to have. And I found out very early that I ended up training our hackers on Pipedrive because they didn't really understand the application and whether the vulnerability was critical. They couldn't even determine whether it was a critical high or low vulnerability just because they didn't study the application before they submitted the bug. So there was a lot of training that went on there. So it became very clear very quickly that I had key people that I wanted to maintain contact with in HackerOne, and those are the relationships that I still, even today, I maintain. And of course, another weakness of HackerOne is your different hackers have different areas of focus. There's very few people that can just do everything. So they kind of have one area, they come in, they stick with you for a time. Once you've corrected everything that they have to offer, they move on, and then you're waiting for the next boy genius to come along and they give you something new to go after. And also another weakness of HackerOne is HackerOne gets a percentage of the payouts, and then my hackers that argue about the payouts, and this happens enough that I'm talking about it. So if they want to argue about the payouts, like this is once more a conversation, relationship, and noise I don't want to deal with. And so they help one another to kind of push up the payouts. So, yeah. So what we did end up doing, going back to efficiency, privacy by design. Now this was of course, GDPR is here. It's a good thing. It's something we should be doing anyway. It's regulated now, so you have a responsibility and obligation to your customers' privacy. You will not achieve privacy or provide privacy in any way, shape, or form if you don't do security well. So the next step after that was security by design. We created a security by design basically off the OWASP top 10. Of course, there's many more interesting things to go after, but these are the basics that you're going to be teaching your same developers constantly about, just to make sure that they're up to speed. And as Rohan mentioned, it's been 20 years and we're still doing SQL injection. So, like puzzles. But and then InfoSec and cyber training. Once again, going back to training, one of the I think most influential things we did was we had cyber sieges. We use a company called Rangeforce for that. They provide an environment. It's a siege. The way they run it, they can run it individually, like every hacker for themselves. I changed it. I asked them to set it up in a way that we have our teams working together. So every team has their own environment. They go in, they sit down, and they can work together. And what happened, or allowed me to observe, was number one, how they work as a team. I got to see them how they operated or handled duress, because it gets stressful. And they're actually, it's very transparent in the fact that all the team members get to know who's who. So we had situations where very experienced people knew nothing, and the team was carrying them. We also had people get up and walk out because they were embarrassed at how much they did not know. Mm-hmm. And they did come back, they persevered and made it through. But it was a great learning experience, and it was emotional. And if anybody here is in education, you understand that if you want to teach something, you should attach some emotion to it. Good or bad, it will be remembered. So, at the end of the events, to be the winner of the event, you had to be on the winning team. So you had to work as a team, and you had to train other people. We got to see some very interesting things. Some people were got solutions, very ugly. Other people were very eloquent. Got to see who those people were. More importantly, the teams got to see who those people were. And now they're immediately, they end up being your champions. So now inside the company, they're the go-to people. Now they don't go to me. So once again, another efficiency. And we do have a good culture now, so people understand, and I see developers training each other on the OWASP top 10, the simple things that they've already encountered, rather than having me explain it to them or get training regularly. I can give actually more valuable training, something more in-depth and more interesting. Also, the winners of these, I usually send to conferences. They go to conferences, and then they have to pay their duty when they come back. They have to report about the conference and then teach on a text talk. It's a form like this, what they learned. And those things are great knowledge sharing. So my areas of risk. Okay, even today, the supply chain, we have 200 some SaaS applications, plus all of our partners. That's my biggest area of risk. And so I'm always trying to figure out how to lower that. Yeah, we're actually going to start, Chris had mentioned the VSAQ. This is what we use to manage risk for people that don't have programs. Like if they cannot speak to security, then they have to fill this out. And we'll accept them for some period of time. 6 months, we're going to review them again. But what is that? It's a waste of time. And so basically, we're dealing with people that don't have or are not getting certified, then it becomes a real challenge. So what I'm starting to do is offer these people the option to go into Detectify. For the man hours I save, it's cheaper to buy Detectify, have them provide us a report every 3 months, and I can actually follow the risk much better. So my second biggest risk is always damaging company culture. You want to teach people about security, but they're never going to be as enthusiastic as we are. So you do your best and you just accept what you get, and perseverance and persistence are kind of the keys here. But we have a great culture, and it took time to build it, and now I'm just very careful so we don't make sudden moves that might damage that. And once again, a military term. So now that I have all these people trained up and a decent culture, it's a force multiplier. I have a lot more people, as Christian mentioned, we have a lot more reports coming in, a lot more valuable reports. I have better metrics. I can actually baseline everything, and that has been the biggest advantage. That's really moved our program along. So Detectify, I think I mentioned some of these things, and we integrate it into our deployment cycle. So if you guys have heard of DevOps, well, DevSecOps, I think is the next key phrase you want to hear. But what you want to do is you want to get security into your deployment cycle. So we do this in a number of ways, actually 5, and not everything gets caught, for sure. We accept that, it's part of the risk, but we do a pretty good job. And because we have continuous, like we deploy 20 times a day on average, and that means that the scans are being done 20 times a day. So if something gets missed or something gets introduced, we find it pretty quickly. So also, once again, when Christian mentioned these certifications, they're great. They're great marketing. Like we want actually that's also another force multiplier, because now we have a certification. I can give it to marketing people. I can give it to the sales and support people, and they can get rid of a conversation, and they can have a more meaningful conversation with customers. So there's value there. With this integration, so 5 steps for us. Gets the deployment. Sometimes things hang out there for a couple of weeks before they get found. Once again, we accept it, but we move on. Detectify is a part of that. Lower the bug bounty costs. So by 2/3. Thank you very much. Once again, a metric I can speak to that has financial implications and allows me to divert spending to newer programs or something more valuable. And real value there. The time to risk, sure. I have my developers all trained up. They can read a report now. They understand what it means. They understand how to go about it. They even see it on Slack. We have it integrated with Slack, so they take interest in it, and they're pulling information from us. I'm not pushing information anymore, I believe. And one of the best things a Detectify did was that the reports. I can look at the report, I understand what my last scan was and what my new scan was. I understand the delta, what was changing. And so I can actually look specifically to where I need to look. It really saves a lot of time. And I appreciate that. It's a small thing, maybe. I don't know how long it took to do. But it really, once again, was a force multiplier for us. And they've been a great partner. So yeah, communicate well, and we don't waste each other's time, and they deliver well. So thank you very much. Questions?
Any questions? There.
You mentioned metrics. So your boss has to like sort of how safe is the company on a scale of 5 1 to 10. Can you deliver that, and what do you use as the metrics for measuring how well the company's doing in security area?
Well, I would love to have them all in one place, but we don't. So the tool that we use is Ramba. And once again, I looked at many GRC tools. They are so costly. And these guys, he's information security manager. He developed the tool himself over a 7-year period. And when we ran across it, Christian found it. When we ran across it, it was $2,500 for. It has an open source installation. It has a 1 UI. $2,500 was a bargain, and it saved a lot of time. And they're constantly making it better. I haven't found a better one. And so I can manage my whole program in there. I run the risk program through there. Risk program is basically assets, business assets, and then the SaaS applications or the third-party applications, or supply chain. Those are the 2 areas I'm concerned with. And so I can actually sit down and show them exactly where it is. And as I say, our supply chain is always the biggest concern. There's a lot of it, and it's getting better all the time, but that's because there's so much to improve on. Any questions?
I have one. So you talked about bug bounties and automation. Where do you see, like a lot of people we're talking to is asking about this. Either they're gonna go about to implement the bug bounty program, or they're considering either or when it comes to like, we're just gonna do one thing. Where do you see the values, the biggest benefits with both bug bounties and automation?
Because the bug bounties, you get people that are specialists, and they're looking at your application for some period of time, and they're going to find things that are not in a scanner. It's just the way it is. If you're strapped for money, I would go with Detectify. It's a better investment. If you are ready to go, because if you start a bug bounty program right away, you're going to be paying out left to right because you didn't catch the simple stuff that a scanner can take care of. We introduce the WAS top 10 into the application regularly, and then we catch it regularly. And that's a big battle. We're still there. And if you think that you want to jump into a bug bounty program, you might have a specific area you want to look at, maybe a new application or part of the application you want to test. That makes sense. Just to have an open bounty program, like hire 3 people that are going to just be doing that all the time. You got to manage it right. That being said, like we do, like the bug bounty program, we have a handful of them in Alice, and they're good ones too, and we're grateful. I'm happy to pay that money out.
Cool, thank you. All right, I know that it's very, very hot in here, so I'm gonna try to be brief. After this is done, we're gonna be serving pizzas here. Yeah, they're there already. So, stick with me for another 15 minutes, and yeah, then we head down, bring some drinks, and even though you need to head out, go down and grab a slice of pizza. We have plenty. So, all right, I'm gonna give some updates when it comes to our service. And I'm going to start off with one of the main things we're working on right now, and that's our crowdsource community. As Jesse mentioned, we know that we can't hire everyone, so people that don't know what our crowdsource community is, it's a platform where we pretty much open source our R&D for new vulnerabilities. As of today, maybe I have some stats. Yes, as of today, we have about 150 researchers that are helping us finding different vulnerabilities across different systems that we then build into our service and give to all of our customers. So just during the last 90 days, we can see here we have 26 new researchers. We have 106 new submissions, and during those days we implemented almost 50 vulnerabilities. So this is a great tool for us to be able to adapt to the things that happen out there, new research, whatever it may be. So yeah, this is something that we're working on expanding, of course. And yeah, I know that there are some security people in here. If you want to be part of this community, let us know. We're always looking for new talent to acquire. Yes, and some of the vulnerabilities that we've released, is the Acme XSS. We have 6 authentication bypass vulnerabilities that we implemented. We have a struts, our remote code executions.
Another?
Yeah, another. So these things pops up all the time, and for those who are familiar with the tool, you know that you can always see the latest one within the tool, what we released. We did a release yesterday, I think, with 20 or so new vulnerabilities. So this is one of the things why we push for you guys continuously monitoring your site, even though try to do at least scan bi-weekly when we do releases, because there's a lot of new things that pops up, and there's a lot of things here that might affect your site as well. Here's some updates. So yeah, as I said, we have some very good talent in here. Some people have different approaches, what they're focusing on. So we have some people that find a lot of high-value vulnerabilities that affect a lot of people, or very few people, and then we have people focusing on some minor things affecting many. But this is a good balance, and in this platform as well, we can get them to prioritize different types of technologies. So I said this before, but if you're spending a lot of time on developing in Node.js, for example, let us know, and we'll make sure that it is prioritized within this community, and we will start finding new vulnerabilities within that. Some updates. We have done some releases since we last sat here. One of them is OWASP, as we've been discussing today. So supporting the 2017, we've always been supporting in terms of what we've been looking for, but rather we support this in terms of what you can access within the tool and see which category it belongs to. And one key thing that I heard both from Christian and Jesse now is that education is key. So we believe that this is a great way of educating your developers and your team. After you start scanning some application, you're gonna start seeing patterns, like where do we have the most issues? Is it a lot of broken authentications or injections we have? Then we have a lot of resources that we can provide you with in terms of how do we become better at avoiding these vulnerabilities from surfacing again. Either through within the tools, you can do a workshop. We're happy to help out in forming a workshop together with you and read our articles. Gives examples of well-known events when people have, or companies has been hacked within these different types of categories. Yes, and another thing is that we believe that security is a shared workload. It's not a two-man job, it's for everyone to work on, and therefore we're working on a dashboard where it's possible to share this across teams. So an idea here, like one thing that we started to lift up was what we actually have been releasing. So highlighting what may be important for you, displaying it to you as soon as you log in, but also the top part here is a lot of blurred stuff right now. But if you have in your team, if you're working on with Detectify, make sure to have this visible for everyone. Make it a gamification thing. Make sure that no one wants to have a red flag on their scam profile. It's actually a great way of encouraging people and getting them motivated. So during this year and next as well, we're going to continue to iterate on this. So this is going to be displaying things that you feel are important. So let us know what you want to see here as well. We always happy to hear feedback. If you're missing a widget of something, let us know, and we'll make sure to have that in consideration. Yeah, integrations. Christian talked about how they integrate this with Jira to making it easier for you to actually not having to log into Detectify every morning. So these are the set of integrations we have today, so you can push out the information. For example, when we find something of high criticality, make sure that it's displayed in channels that they are relevant, for example in Slack, or automatically create a ticket. So you just can assign it to the appropriate person. Some upcoming integrations that we're working towards is Microsoft Teams that we've had a lot of requests around. And up next is ServiceNow. So that is things that might be relevant for some of you. Next big things within configurations of tests is what we call crawler setting, how we gather information. This has, today, when you start a scan, we start with a blank sheet pretty much. We try to approach your application as a hacker. However, we've seen cases where it could be beneficial for you to have faster scans. And one thing here we're considering is to actually be able to reuse previous information. So if you ran a scan, or even that you've been just crawling your site, you tell us to crawl your site every week, and then when you start a scan, you will get the results much faster. Could be very beneficial in different scenarios when you need fast results. And moreover, you should be able to configure exactly how we gather your information to make sure that we cover all parts of your application. Yes, fingerprinting. This is something that we're continuously working on improving. When we scan a site, we try to identify what technologies, frameworks, CMSs, etc. you're using. And this is the reason behind this is because we need to know what we're going to test for. Today we always have 1,000 tests active in the tool, but we're not going to run 1,000 tests towards your application. We want to run, if you're running Node.js, then you're going to have tests that are relevant for you. Same goes with Magento, etc., etc. So this will, in the long term, make it possible for us to be a lot more accurate and consistent across time on what you're running. So already today within the tool, you can see a finding called fingerprinted software. If you see that that doesn't correlate what the software you're running, then let us know and we use this for the R&D of this fingerprinting engine. Yes, and to be able to scale this, you need to be able to roll it out in a good manner. SSO is the way to go. So we have today integrations towards Ping Identity, OneLogin and Okta. Next up is Google OAuth and Azure AD. So if you have a large organization and you need to be able to scale who should have access to what information, this is probably something that you will like. And domain monitoring, this separate product or service we have that makes it possible to monitor large assets in order to identify potential DNS misconfigurations and vulnerabilities related to that. One thing is that we've seen a lot of customers appreciating the new API we did. That's been out now for almost 6 months. Within that as well, we want to integrate the DMS service as part of that, that information flow. So you should be able to pull all information findings. So DMS is one thing that we think is going to be great for especially, as I said, large organizations. And within that as well, we want to add more tests that could be done without us actually crawling your site. So we have some ideas around that. We have the S3 misconfiguration research that we did a while ago. It's going to be implemented, and yeah, a bunch of other ideas. So this is going to be super interesting. If you guys don't know more about this service, just ping us and you'll get some information. This is not something that we have that much publicly listed right now. We've had it under R&D for quite some time, but now it's a full-blown service. So in case you're interested, let us know. All right, so we're going around the world to meet people, hackers, etc. Here's some of the places we'll be at. So we have NGT Stockholm, Göteborg, SecT. We're going to be in Malmö. So in case you're at any security events or something, let us know. We're happy to grab a coffee. We're mostly on these events. We will probably have someone speaking as well. So just ping us at like hello Detectify and we'll meet up. All right. We will have the next quarter event in December. So we've had 2 breakfast events now and now this after work. So next one is going to be breakfast again. We will send out a survey afterwards. Like, we have been adapting the setup of these presentations a lot based on your feedback. So the more feedback you give, the more you can decide whether upon we're going to present one thing or another. So make sure that you respond. And yeah, that was about it. Fast, because now I'm hungry and very warm. Any questions? Yes?
I just heard about bug bounties and that it's hard to live on them to get a good payoff. About 3% get a good payoff.
Yeah.
And the majority wait a lot of time but get a free t-shirt and stuff. Is that a problem growing, or is that the way it should be?
I mean, I think Frederick is a better person answering that, but I think, as you said, there's the top tier that earns a lot of money and then a lot of other people. But what would be your comment around that, Frederick?
Yeah, I think it's a few very good researchers out there. By this point, they have came to this, they are so mature in how to approach bug bounties. So it's quite a steep curve to get into that top tier, earn a lot of money on doing it. That's just an observation.
A few of the best would stay professionals, and the rest would be amateurs and never probably reach.
I mean, it's hard. Right? You need to really engage into the community to be really good at it, I think.
And one thing that's different from traditional, if you talk traditional bug bounties, is that one way of our crowdsourcing, how it differs from traditional bug bounties is, as I said, if you find something that's maybe not as severe, but is affecting a lot of people, you can as well be part of that and earn some money from it. So yeah, some different approaches.
Yeah, you can get lucky.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely. All right. Okay. So we're gonna try to bring the staff here, but feel free to grab a couple of drinks. We head down, I think, to the entrance floor, and then there's a door to the left, and we head out to the patio for some pizza and mingle and drinks, and yeah. Cool. Thank you for coming.